A nationwide approach to hazard reduction, burns and the threat of climate change will be examined by a royal commission into the bushfire crisis. Let's go live to political reporter Eliza Edwards. Eliza, the inquiry draft terms are out there, not officially released, but we're getting an indication of what will be looked at.
Yeah, Tom, an initial indication of what this Bushfire Royal Commission will look like in an effort to prevent another tragic bushfire season like the one we've had. As Scott Morrison first revealed on Sky News, hazard reduction and a nationwide approach to hazard reduction will be considered by the inquiry, as well as the role of climate change in impacting Australia's ability to prevent, respond and mitigate against future natural disasters. Now, the Prime Minister's written to the states to ask for their input on what else should be looked at by this inquiry, but the Senate has decided to hold a separate inquiry into the bushfires, something that government senators argued against.
Committee concerning lessons learned following the 2019-20 bushfire season be taken as a formal motion.
The government does not support this motion. A range of inquiries are already underway at both state and federal levels, which aim to report in advance of the 2020-21 bushfire season. This inquiry would needlessly duplicate the efforts of other inquiries, including the Royal Commission announced by the Prime Minister in his speech yesterday.
The division is ayes 37, noes 33. The matter is resolved in the affirmative.
Labor saying that this separate Senate inquiry is necessary because the scope of the Royal Commission is too narrow, with only a 6-month reporting time frame. And backbencher Anika Wells has also said or accused the government of using hazard reduction as an ideological idea.
I do wonder whether that focus has been a bit of an ideological bent from some of the government members and their sort of position on the Palaszczuk government's land hearing. I'm happy to look at it, but I did note with concern that the PM in question time yesterday was talking about hazard reduction being a greater priority than emissions reduction. And when we think about this as a whole and what we're going to need to do, I think one of the terms of reference was adaptation action. Just how much adaptation is this government prepared to act on? Will they reduce emissions to zero by 2050 to avoid catastrophic climate change?
Eliza, meanwhile, we'll see at some stage this year a new policy from the government on electric cars, even though they were very critical of Labor's policy during the election.
Yeah, that's right, Tom. We've seen a massive spike in electric vehicle sales in Australia over the past year. They're finally on the rise and they've almost tripled, as you can see in this graphic, but it's prompted pressure on the government to come up with a strategy for how to meet that growing demand. And there is the added political problem of the government having attacked Labor's policy on this in the lead up to the last election, saying that a 50% target of new electric vehicle sales by 2030 constituted a war on the weekend. And Liberal Senator Andrew Bragg hasn't been able to say whether the government's policy will end up being very close to Labor's.
If that is the market, then it needs to be facilitated on public roads. So that's what we will do.
And I'm sure people will be happy with that. But what does that say about what we heard during the campaign? Michaelia Cash saying it's a war on the weekend. Labor's coming after your ute because of their not crazily ambitious plan on this.
Well, we never said electric cars were bad.
Well, it was a war on the weekend, isn't that bad?
We never said electric cars were bad. Now,
you said Labor's policy on electric cars.
There may have been some issues with their targets and the level of ambition.
Was there an issue with their target?
There may have been. But
what do you mean may have been?
Well, I can't remember the exact detail of what they were.
Well, they were going to have 50% of new car sales by the year 2030 to be electric vehicle cars. Is that a problem?
Well, we're doing the review. The Minister will release a plan by the middle of the year.
So whether the target comes close to that 50% by 2030, we'll find out when this policy is released in the middle of the year. Tom?